Hi everyone and welcome to another painting tutorial. So today I'm going to take you through how I painted this purple power sword for one of my Blade Guard veterans of my Ultramarines army. So over a Mechanicus standard grey undercoat, I'm just going to begin working the bottom of the blade with DECHALA Lilac, and as you can see I'm using my wet palette and I have all of my colours ready to go. And as you can see it's fairly thinned down as well. So really just going to gradually work these colours together. So following similar steps to my last power sword tutorial, however this is going to be a little bit different by the end. And apologies for, there are a few points throughout the tutorial where I do lose a bit of focus on the camera. However, for the most part, certainly captured all the most important parts. Definitely something I'm still sort of working on. At the moment, I do just use my phone to film my tutorials. So definitely going to be looking at purchasing something a little bit better down the way. But for the meantime, it's definitely been doing the job fairly well. So now moving on to GENESTEALER Purple, and I'm just going to begin blending through the lower center of the blade. And you might have noticed as well, I've got two pools of GENESTEALER paint. So one at the bottom is a little bit watered down, and the one at the top is very watered down. Now the reason for this is that for the more heavily watered down one, which I'll be using more of soon, is for when I blend between the XEREUS purple that I'm now applying, just from the center of the blade to the top, and of course between the GENESTEALER purple and the DECHALA Lilac as well. And now just going back to DECHALA Lilac, just to layer the bottom of the blade once again. And as you can see now, just getting some of the more heavily watered down GENESTEALER Purple, and I'm going to begin blending between the DECHALA Lilac and the GENESTEALER Purple. And as I mentioned in my last power sword tutorial, it's really important when blending colours to just be really patient with it. Take as much time as you need to. And as you can see, they're just jumping back and forth between those colors and really just trying to get a nice smooth transition between the colors. And as there was quite a stark difference between the DECHALA Lilac and GENESTEALER Purple, I decided just to blend down, or tone down, the DECHALA Lilac a little bit with the heavily watered down GENESTEALER Purple. And now just going back to XEREUS Purple, and just ever so carefully just working the blend there between the XEREUS Purple and the GENESTEALER Purple. And now to use some NAGGAROTH Night, just for the top part of the blade. So just use this color quite sparingly, and just aim to do, I would say, about 2 coats of this. See how it's looking after 2 coats. If you need to do a third, go right ahead and do a third one. And just gradually blending down the DECHALA Lilac a little bit more, using the heavily watered down GENESTEALER Purple. And as you can see, even just comparing it to how the blade was looking a couple of minutes ago in the tutorial, you can see how quickly it comes together. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of just being really, really patient with details such as this, because at the end of the day, the power sword on a Space Marine, for example, is such an eye-catching piece of the model. So even if you end up spending a couple of hours on the power sword and then just a couple of hours on the rest of the entirety of the miniature, I would definitely say it's worthwhile, as a really epic power sword will draw a lot of attention to the model. And I'm just going to blend down the DECHALA Lilac with that GENESTEALER Purple again. But basically at this point, you can just keep blending the colors until you get to a point that you're really happy with how the transitions look between the colors. Just to mention as well though, with the details coming up soon in the tutorial, the additional details I should say, it doesn't matter if you don't get it absolutely perfect, because as you can see here, there are still a few noticeable gaps between the blends of color. However, I was happy enough with it at this point to continue on to the next steps. So now just using some LUXION purple contrast paint and some water as well. So looking at about a half-half mix of this. I'm just going to do a single coat to help blend all the colors over the entire blade. And after it's dried, just see how it's looking. If you want to darken the blade further, you can of course add another coat. However, for the sake of this power sword, I did just do the 1 coat. And with the LUXION purple contrast now dry, I'm going to go back to DECHALA Lilac and fill in some additional details. So just around the power node, just to give it a sort of glowing effect from where the energy source is. And I should mention as well, the brush that I have been using for this tutorial is my Raphael 8404 size 3-0 brush. One of my most commonly used brushes these days. It's just a great all-rounder brush. As you can see, holds a fantastic point. I've been using this one for a few weeks now at this point, and you can see that it's still in really good health. And it's approximately $25 Australian. So I would dare say in Europe and America and other parts of the world, perhaps it might be a little bit cheaper. But yeah, the brand Raphael for brushes are my go-to in terms of just an overall, affordability, quality, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I highly recommend them. So with the power node now finished, at least with the lilac, I'm just going to very, very carefully paint some lightning. Now, I wanted the lightning pattern to be consistent for this particular scheme. So as you can see, I'm just doing them more or less in the same direction of the lightning. But the thing with lightning though is that you do want a bit of variation there, as of course in nature, lightning cracks don't tend to look the same. And the trick is, as you can see, my brush is directly pointed down. You really want to make sure that you have the right paint consistency, so obviously not too thick, but also not too watered down, as you don't want the paint running all over the power sword. So if you want to run this on a test model, I'd highly recommend doing that. It's certainly something that I've done in the past, just to get a little bit of practice in. And as you can see there, I mean, even that little lightning strike I just did, for example, it is a little bit thicker than I would have hoped. However, it's it's just all a part of the painting process, really, of improving. I mean, I'm striving to improve every single day, and there's always going to be a little bit of human error in there. But don't be too hard on yourself, if you make little mistakes like that. And there are certainly always little ways to touch it up as well, as we'll get to soon. And as you can see, I've just moved my power sword around there, just to make sure that you always have yourself in a comfortable position, especially when painting such details as this, as you really want to make sure that you get it right the first time. As going back to try and correct lightning, especially when you're using such bright colors over darker shades, can be quite difficult. So back to what I was saying, when painting lightning, just make sure that you don't have a lot of paint on the brush, just to try and maximize the control, and also make sure that the paint consistency is quite smooth, not too thick, not too watered down, and just really take your time with it. And as always, just have references as well. It's always of great help. So now I'm just going to, using DECHALA Lilac still, I'm just going to carefully edge highlight the entire power sword. So just the outer parts of the power sword, and of course through the center. And as you can see, with almost nothing on the brush, it's really important when working the side of your brush to get a fine line highlight like this, that you have almost nothing on the brush, as it can overlap and knock some of those other details that you've already spent so much time on. So just be mindful of that. And as you can see, I have had people ask me in tutorials why I mean, in their words, sort of, you know, paint my hand. And I know it looks like that, but it's just a fast way for me to remove excess paint off my brush, as opposed to going back to the palette constantly. And as you can see there, just thickening up the lines just near the top edges of the sword. And just to add some final bits of details and definition to the power sword, I'm just going to use some white scar. So with the white scar, in terms of the edge highlighting for the blade, I'm just going to focus on the very top of the blade, so the sides and of course the center. And just some small dot highlights through the center of the blade, where the lightning meets. And also just where the lightning ends at the ends of the blade as well. And you can of course add some additional dots just throughout the lightning if you want to make them pop a little bit more. And just to help the power node pop a little bit more, I'm just going to edge highlight the power node itself, and just a little bit at the top of the power node here as well. So just carefully applying that. And here are some photos of the completed Blade Guard veteran of the Ultramarine Space Marine chapter. So I hope you found this tutorial useful today. Please hit that subscribe button if you like what you saw, as it really does help me out. Leave a comment below of something that you might like to see soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one.